Hello and welcome, truth seekers. It's story time. This is a three-part story, but all very satisfying, so don't get mad. For part 1, a husband discovers his wife cheating when he sees some very surprising videos caught in his doorbell camera. Before we begin, make sure to like and subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Bobby, I didn't suspect. Quite the opposite. I knew that our love life had stagnated down to 3 times a weekend, like clockwork, and needed to be spiced up, but I swear my only thought was to get Glenda excited. I just didn't know why Brother Doug had given me a doorbell camera, but Glenda didn't like the look of it. She was proud of our Victorian home and felt that the camera would be anachronistic. I like our 1880s look, she gave me a pout. Let's not ruin it, honey. So, it sat on my dresser, waiting for me to find a way to explain it to Doug without it sounding like a rejection. Now, it figured into my plan to spice up our lives. That night, I moved the doorbell camera from the dresser to the bookshelf opposite my bed. "What's that doing there?" Glenda asked. It was in my way on the dresser, so I put it there until I can figure out what to do with it without offending my brother. He was being thoughtful when he gave us that, and I want to ensure he's not hurt when he finds out we've rejected his gift. I responded. It seemed to satisfy her. The next day, I bought an identical camera. I opened it up and modified it, silencing its alarm bells and speakers, disconnecting the LED lights, and then wired it with a plug-in power cable. Later, I switched the cameras and fed the power cord through the back of the bookshelf. I now have a motion-activated camera in my bedroom. I hooked it up to the Wi-Fi so I could access it through the internet. It would send me the same alerts that it would have done at the front door, but the internal speaker was disabled, so it would make no sounds nor play any messages should I not pick up the alert. The camera's images would be saved to my cloud, so now maybe I would have some sexy videos that could excite us when we played them back. Yeah, in hindsight, really a stupid plan. It all seemed like a good idea until it wasn't. And it wasn't right away. It had taken a week for me to modify the camera and to replace it in the bedroom with the power hooked up without raising Glenda's suspicions. So, it was Monday before it went into action, and I was scheduled to be out of town until Thursday. I giggled, thinking I might catch Glenda relieving the pressure with her toys. Glenda's mundane movements in the bedroom set off alert after alert, so I soon stopped paying attention to each of them during that first day, and after dinner drinks had me flop on the bed and fall right to sleep. It wasn't until Wednesday night that I finally had time to review the videos in the cloud. I skipped over the videos from Monday morning until 10 a.m., when I left for the airport. Most of the day was my wife moving in and out of the bedroom, but at 2 o'clock a man appeared. I didn't know him, but my wife was caressing his arms and looking at him with a longing I didn't recognize. "So, your husband's out of town until when?" the man asked as he ran a hand over Glenda's B-cup melons, giving them a squeeze. "Thursday." Glenda licked her lips. "Next week it's back to the normal schedule. But today there's no hurry for you to leave. You can even stay overnight." She pulled his head down and planted a kiss on his lips. "Now get these off," she commanded. I watched in horror as my missionary-only wife, with her use and not in my mouth, went full 6 and 9 with a stranger. I triggered the fast-forward function. I realized I had been staring, unseeing at the screen. I was barely aware that they had segs in numerous positions during the day, and in all her orifices. They'd left the room several times to eat and shower, I supposed. I hadn't been listening at all. With everything I saw so far, I rushed to the toilet to vomit. I stopped the video and went out to buy a bottle of anything. It ended up being bourbon, but only because it was closest to the door of the liquor store. It was a quarter gone by the time I returned to my room. The message light on the room telephone was blinking. I picked up my cell that I'd left charging on the desk and saw that Glenda had called several times. I picked up the message on the hotel phone and yep, it was Glenda. She wanted to make sure of my flight time tomorrow. She was irritated that I wasn't answering my cell. Gee, I wondered why. The messages on my cell were increasingly irritated at her failure to reach me. I booted up the laptop and loaded the videos from the time of her first call. Another surprise. Different guy. But the good news was my brother wouldn't feel any rejection that I hadn't used his present. It was him. in bed with Glenda in his birthday suit. The first part of the video recorded them stumbling into the room, in each other's arms, then falling onto the bed. Oh yes, and they were both in their birthday suits. I fast-forwarded through to the actual act. Not missionary, though. Seems she reserved missionary just for me. Glenda reached for the phone. Now hush, Doug. Let me make sure Bobby's plans haven't changed. She dialed the phone with one hand and then held the remote phone to her ear. The other hand was absently playing with Doug's stick. They'd just finished, but little Dougie was showing interest already. Darn, it's going to his voicemail. She looked irritated as she left her first message. Doug was definitely showing interest now, but Glenda held him back when he reached for her. No, he's going to call back and I don't want to be interrupted. I watched as Doug pressed her for another go, while she held him off as she left her multiple messages, getting more and more frustrated with me after each failure to connect. She finally tried the hotel phone. I'd fast-forwarded through most of the scene, so I didn't get to hear any of Doug's obvious pleading between phone calls. Finally, little Dougie had lost interest and my brother was now just sitting back against the headboard, looking irritated. I was shocked when he pointed directly at the camera. I stopped the playback and reversed it to just before he pointed. Hey, he said, what's my present doing on your bookshelf? Yeah, thanks for that. Glenda paused her latest dialing attempt and sneered at Doug. Stupidest present ever. Do you really want Bobby to have a record of people coming and going from this house? Huh. Doug looked sheepish as the connotations occurred finally to him. God, no. Well, it stays there until he figures out how not to insult you while rejecting your gift. She resumed dialing. Stupid, ducking idiot, she said. Took me a minute to realize she meant Doug and not me. I triggered the fast-forwarding again. The fast-forwarding stopped itself and I realized I was now watching live-action video. Glenda looked very frustrated, especially when her hand action was failing to resurrect little Dougie. She apparently gave up waiting for me and started using her mouth to get Doug back in the mood. Gee, I couldn't remember the last time those lips had touched little Bobby. You? Glenda had always greeted any plea for a little head. That's just gross. So, now I watched with interest as she not only went down on Doug's stick, but tried to swallow it whole, still covered with the evidence of their last duck. It took a while, but she finally resurrected the dead stick and got down to the next order of business. So, I picked up the phone and called home. I mean, what else would you do? The look of frustration and aggravation on both their faces almost seemed worth it. Glenda swore, then swore again before getting off my brother, instead of getting him off, to answer the phone. She shushed Doug before answering. Oh, Bobby. Butter would have melted in her mouth. I was so worried when I couldn't reach you. Where were you? Oh, I'm sorry. My phone died and I'd left the charger in the room. We worked right through today and finished early. I'm on my way to the airport to see about getting a flight home. I could be there in an hour if I hurry. I'll see you later. I rang off. Glenda swore even more. You've got to get the duck out of here, she told my brother. He tried to grab her, saying that they had time for a quick one. Are you nuts? She jumped out of bed. Your brother thinks he could be here in an hour. It's only a half-hour flight. I've got to clean the sheets and the everything. Oh, sure. She finished as she started pulling off the bedding with Doug still on ITM while former brother started getting dressed, with his stick bouncing in front of him. I hoped he caught it in the zipper. I stopped the live feed. Didn't care, I thought. Bourbon. This called for more bourbon. I had no intention of trying to get home. If she called, I'll tell her that no flights were available and that I'd just returned to the hotel. Duck her. Everyone else had. I wasn't going to say anything until after I saw the lawyer. I went back over the previous videos. The mystery man from Monday tried to get Glenda to invite him back on Tuesday and Wednesday, but she was adamant that this was a one-shot. New week. Back to the normal schedule. Normal schedule? Apparently this wasn't a one-off. This was her normal afternoons, extended now into the evenings. On the Tuesday videos, I expected Doug, since the mystery man was denied. But it wasn't my brother. It was two brothers, the sons of our neighbors. They were college kids who seemed willing to skip classes for the day. Glenda offered them all her holes, all the positions they wanted. Then they lounged in my bed while she went and prepared lunch, and later a dinner, which they consumed still in my bed. She wouldn't even let me eat a candy bar in bed. Perversely, this seemed to bother me more than all the segs. God, was I kitty whipped and clueless? I was finishing the bourbon as the brothers DPs my wife. The idea had made me throw up my food earlier, but I really wanted to hang on to the bourbon in my stomach that I couldn't believe it. Who was this woman? I passed out from the bourbon and frankly from boredom. I just wasn't that interested in watching a hoe get plowed. Glenda called me later. I woke up and told her that flights weren't available, and I'd just gone to sleep in the hotel. After I hung up, I was treated to the vision of my wife swearing while trying to get Doug back over, but he'd gone home to his wife and said he couldn't get back out. Undeterred, she called our gardener and told him that she wasn't sure about meeting tomorrow. Thursday was his day to do our yard and I guess, to do my wife as well. But he and Jose were welcome to come over tonight. That I shut down the website and stumbled out. I just made it to the liquor store in time to buy another bottle before closing. Luckily, I passed out again before drinking too much of that bottle. I didn't really want to unalive myself. The next morning, nursing the worst hangover I'd had since college, I downloaded several of the videos. I picked the ones I thought had the best action. I sent the appropriate ones to Doug's wife, the boys' parents, and hopefully my gardener's wife's Facebook page. If it wasn't her page, well, I hoped whoever got it enjoyed it anyway. I then went to my wife's Facebook page and posted a video I'd strung together from the clips, changing her password on the way out. I thought her parents might enjoy the home movies as well, so I included an email for them. I packed and headed for the airport, after setting up an appointment with a divorce lawyer for that afternoon. I ignored the repeated calls from my wife and from our families that day. I didn't care. Maybe it was the bourbon, maybe it was the disrespect that my wife had for me, or maybe it was just self-disgust, but I was numb and just didn't care. I tried not to wonder what was wrong with me that my wife offered everything to my neighbors, my brother, my gardeners, and even a random stranger, but for me, just missionary. And I still didn't know who would show up on Fridays. The weekends hopefully were reserved for the missionary work. That's it for part 1. My lovely truth seekers. Make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next parts of this story. Be safe, and I'll see you in the next video.